Hello, Hornet Nation. My name is Allison Garrett, and I am honored to serve as Emporia State University's president. Welcome to the Alumni in the Spotlight series, in which we interview this year's distinguished alumni and outstanding recent graduates. We are so proud at this time to recognize Ron FRIERSON as one of our 2020 distinguished alumni, the highest honor granted by Emporia State University and the Alumni Association. Since the program started in 1960, we have recognized more than 200 alums. Congratulations, Ron. We are so proud of you, and we thank you for representing Emporia State University so well. To our audience, enjoy this interview with one of Emporia State's finest graduates.
Thank you, President Garrett. Welcome to the Alumni in the Spotlight series. My name is John Rich, and I am an Emeritus Professor of Accounting from the School of Business at Emporia State. Today we celebrate one of our 2020 distinguished alumni, Ronald Lamont FRIERSON Jr., who received his BS degree in Social Science in 1996. It is my great honor and privilege to say a few words of introduction of him. Ron, the son of a minister, is originally from Saginaw, Michigan. Ron is a gifted athlete and was recruited to play basketball by ESU's legendary basketball coach, Ron Slaymaker. Unfortunately for me, Ron was never in one of my classes or a student in one of our business programs. My acquaintance with Ron developed through my academic role in athletics. Ron is a friendly, pleasant person and has a genuine interest in getting to know others and discovering their perspectives. That may be just another way of saying he likes to talk. He has a highly developed capacity to empathize and identify with others. Even as a student, he understood the value of positive relationships and possessed the confidence and interpersonal skills to interact effectively with a broad variety of audiences. One day, Ron appeared at my office door and asked, maybe insisted, that I recommend him for a position with the state of Kansas. There was an opening in the Kansas Department of Commerce for a recruiter or liaison working with companies and investors on the West Coast, planning or at least interested in expanding or relocating to Kansas. I called Lieutenant Governor and Secretary of Commerce Gary Scherer. We had an interesting and frank discussion about Ron's qualifications for the position. He was very young. He was from Michigan and did not know all that much about Kansas. It was a complicated position requiring interactions with many agencies, governmental units, companies, and wealthy individuals on topics such as tax incentives, workforce availability, facilities, training opportunities, etc. Ron was a high energy person, had excellent interpersonal skills, and was very persuasive. Lieutenant Governor Scherer ultimately hired Ron for the position, and the rest, as they say, is history. This was the beginning of his formal role in bringing people together. I later discovered that Ron was already active in bringing people together during his time as a student at ESU. His relationship with his teammates was exceptional. They were more like brothers than teammates. He has business interests, ad hoc staffing solutions with one of his teammates, Kevin Robinson. This company eventually became a vendor for NBC Studios. He has great relationships with their families and their children and has been a positive force and factor in their lives. After accepting the position with the Department of Commerce, Ron spent time developing contacts and learning the ropes and was successful in being part of the effort that resulted in many companies expanding efforts or relocating to Kansas. One of those firms, Norfolk Iron and Metal, is located in Emporia. These companies have added substantial employment opportunities and revenue to the people as well as to the state of Kansas. In 2001, Ron created his own consulting company, FRIERSON & Company, which which expanded his client base to representing not only governmental units, but business units as well. Ron became well known and respected in this sector of the economy. He joined CBRE as a vice president and then was a principal with Hickey and Associates. Along the way, he began hosting a podcast focused with Ron Frierson on the Universal Broadcasting Network, addressing social, cultural, and economic issues. In 2016, he was named Director of the National Incentive Practice for NAI Capital. In 2018, the Mayor of Los Angeles selected Ron for the position of Director of Economic Policy for the City of Los Angeles, one of the largest and most diverse cities in the world. Ron has great passion for our young people and has developed programs to serve that population, especially underserved and high-risk environments in both Los Angeles and Saginaw. In closing, I extend my congratulations and joy on the birth of your son. Ron, the Emporia State University family is very proud of you. You have been very highly successful in bringing people together, which is another way of saying leadership. You have done very well. Perhaps more importantly, you have done good, as in the greater good. I do believe, however, that for Ron Frierson, the best is yet to come. Joining our honored guest today is our interviewer, Dr. Aswad Allen, ESU's Chief Diversity Officer. You will have the opportunity to learn more about Ron Frierson and then have a chance to ask your own questions. To do so, please visit emporia.edu/live and submit your questions using the Q&A form found at that site. At the conclusion of the interview, if you have previously received a Zoom link, don't forget to join us for the after-party Zoom session. There you'll have a chance for some one-on-one discussion with Mr. Frierson. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce you to Mr. Ron Frierson and Dr. Aswad Allen.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Dr. Rich, for that great introduction. As mentioned, I'm Dr. Allen, ESU's Chief Diversity Officer. I'm honored to be joined this evening by one of this year's distinguished alumni recipients, Mr. Ron Frierson. Welcome, Ron, and welcome, audience. I'm excited to have this opportunity to talk with you, to interview and to discuss some of Mr. Frierson's personal and professional journey. Hopefully we'll discuss topics that you all are interested in regarding his experiences here at Emporia State, as well as his professional career path. And as we get towards the end of this interview, my hope is that the audience will engage in some Q&A. We've had a few questions come in early, and we'll use those as well as take questions later. We have some amazing students who have tuned in, and we're just looking forward to including you all in this conversation. Ron, let's jump right into this discussion. I want everybody to relax, and we're just going to go on a journey looking at Ron's background and experience and skills, and I'm sure he's going to provide some insights about how he was able to navigate some challenging times, some positive experiences, and then hopefully we'll take a look at some of his words of wisdom. So Ron, as you think back to your pre-college years in Michigan, what was it that attracted you to Emporia State? Coming out of Michigan, that's a decision that has to be intentional. So talk to us about that.
Thank you, Dr. Allen. First off, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate this opportunity. I appreciate this honor, and congratulations to all of my fellow award recipients. And thank you to the Alumni Association and Dr. Garrett and Dr. Rich. I haven't seen the introduction, but I know Dr. Rich did a bang up job, of course. And just thank you guys. And I'm sure that we will discuss in detail my relationship with Dr. Rich as well and Coach Slaymaker. But I came from Michigan. I was a late bloomer out of high school. I grew pretty swiftly. I grew up until like maybe my junior year of college. And so there was a time wherein I had to have my height catch up with my skills catch up with my height, I should say. And so as that process took when my junior college coach, Coach Mike LaRose, who was a former assistant to Coach Ron Slaymaker, he noticed. And I was the sixth leading scorer in the nation at that time. And Coach Slay took notice. And Coach Slay came to visit me. I had other schools, obviously, that were recruiting me, but Coach Slay, and if I'm sure many people on this call know Coach Slay, if they don't, they should get to know him. He's a very convincing person and a warm personality and a great recruiter. And he sat in our living room in Michigan, and he flew up to recruit me, and he told my parents that he would take care of me, that I would be in good hands. And me and my dad and mom spoke about it, and we all agreed that really based on the strength and persuasiveness of that conversation with Coach Slay, that maybe Emporia would be best for me, not just basketball wise, but just in helping me to develop as a person. And I'm so glad I made that decision. And Emporia was very different for me in the beginning, and plus it was my first time away from home, which was difficult. If you've grown up around your family and your friends for your entire life, and now you're not just going to another city but another state,
Right.
and on that campus, it's very different from where I was from. So it was a complete culture shock in many ways, shape, and form. But I know that it all made me better, and so that was a catalytic, very transformative time in my life. That decision of going to Emporia State, and you see, I wear it proudly, and it's a lot of people in Los Angeles and around the world that know about Emporia State now.
That's
And
good.
I get those questions, where is that? And I say, it's in Kansas. And I wear it with pride. So yeah.
Right. There are many alum, not only across the state of Kansas and not only across the country, but across the world. And I'm getting to know them as well. So you touched upon Coach Slaymaker's persuasion, but I would have to say that you also hit on something a little bit deeper than his persuasion. You and your parents talked, and you trusted him. You trusted what he said. You trusted that he was going to keep his word, and that made a difference. It sounds like.
Absolutely.
From that decision, coming on campus and then having some of those challenging experiences and growth experiences. What were some of the, I guess, the hardships or challenges being a student and being an athlete, being, I guess, high profile in a sort of a way, and being in a different environment, in a different community? What was that like, and what were some of the things that you learned during that time?
Well, I would, my upbringing somewhat equipped me for that, and it came out when I was away. In regards to knowing who I was, knowing and having a core about myself. And also, my father's a pretty prominent minister in my hometown. And I've known for a long time that I don't blend very well. I may not, notice how many people notice me. Okay. And this was before the gray hair. Now everybody can notice me tall with gray hair. But I've always been aware that I don't blend very well. So conduct
You
yourself.
stood out.
Yeah. Conduct yourself accordingly. So with that, with understanding who I was going into the situation, one of the great things about being a college athlete and high profile, if that's what you want to call it, is that you have a baked in family with your teammates. So I wasn't like the typical student or regular student, so to speak, that came on campus and didn't know anyone that had to make friends. I came in with a ready-made family, a group of guys that I was going to be around, whether or not we liked each other in the beginning. We were going to be around each other to the point where we forged a relationship and a brotherhood I hold dear to this day. Many of my best friends in life are friends that I made during my time at Emporia State that were my teammates. So that in and of itself, and many of my teammates were from different places around the country as well. So all of us convening in Emporia and being around each other, having a team, having a leader like Coach Slay, it all helped make the situation a lot easier. The one thing that my teammates really couldn't do for me was as much I was homesick. I missed my family. I
Right.
missed, my mom and my grandmother, and obviously my parents, my brother and sister. I just missed my family, and this was during a time where there was no free long distance calls. So every time you call home, it cost money, and there was no email during that time. So
That's right.
because it was, you felt further away, and so, but I think that also helped me to mature. But there were growing pains along that route or along that path. But it all helped me to mature, and I think it made me the man I am today.
That's great. That's great. So how about your academic experience here at ESU? How did social sciences and exposure to other courses and faculty on campus help shape you? And what things would you want to offer to our listeners regarding that?
With complete transparency, I didn't realize how good of an education I was getting and even how important it was until later on in my career. Because I was all about basketball. That's all I thought about was playing basketball. That's all I wanted to do was play basketball. And every young man's dream is to play basketball. I had my brief moment of time doing that, which we'll speak about after college. But I think that what really touched me was there are certain professors that got me really interested in certain topics in school. Um, I remember Dr. DeVito, and he would speak about his international time when he spent time in China, talking about Tiananmen Square during that time. I remember Dr. Phil Kelly, who's probably my favorite professor there that I had as a teacher, other than Slay, but Slay was his player, so that didn't count. So, but Dr. Phil Kelly, and just he's had a government class that he would teach, if I remember correctly, and he would talk about his time in Paraguay and Asunción, and just he would teach in a way that you were engaged, like completely engaged. And there are other professors who were Dr. Chris Phillips, who was there. I think he taught an African American study class. There are so many professors that I think that had I gone to a much larger university, that
Mhm.
maybe they wouldn't have been as interactive with the students, wherein they knew you. And it could be a little different for me because I was a college athlete and all of them knew who I was, but you still felt as if they cared. They
Right.
cared about you beyond the basketball court. They would, if I was slacking, because I know they're like, Mr. Frierson, it was it was great, and it was what I needed. If I look back on it, had I gone to a much bigger school, I wonder, we all have these times in your life where you wonder, had you made this decision or that decision. The best way for me to frame this is to say that I am so glad and so proud of the decision I did make, and where it led me, and the relationships and what I was taught. And like I said, sometimes you don't really know how certain things resonate until you are put in a situation where that needs to come to the fore.
Right. Right.
So some of the lessons and the interactions, and of course the curriculum and skill sets that I was able to acquire during my time in Emporia. When it was time for the game to be played, I was ready, and I'm proud of that. And
That's great.
yeah.
So you had, to start off with, you had Coach Slaymaker establishing a trusting relationship. You made a decision, you and your family, for you to come to Emporia State. In some ways, it was almost like a fish out of water, but you had already experienced some of that before because you stood out, or you had the spotlight on you willingly or unwillingly. And you forged some strong family-like relationships with your teammates, established a sense of belonging through, the professors and the staff on campus that took personal interest in your experience and your success here. And it wasn't easy. You didn't necessarily know all that was happening, but everything that was deposited in you, you were able to carry it forward into the next phase, it sounds like.
Absolutely.
Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. And that's essentially what education is, right? Education is something we're taught in abstract, in theory, in many cases, because life brings specifics. And
Right.
the specifics are sometimes not taught in a classroom because no one has a predictive model that can just let you know exactly what you're going to face, what other sort of critical thinking or problem solving that's necessary to accomplish a certain goal. You don't know what it is, but if you've been trained properly, when that situation arises, those principles apply, and then there you are. And that is one of the reasons I say that, and it's the complete educational experience. Obviously, we have the curriculum, but I've always looked at colleges and universities as and which I think that this current generation, if they are not allowed to be on campus and interact amongst each other, and they have to do everything online and virtual, I'm sure we'll speak about that in a while. I think they're going to be missing a lot because education is all encompassing. It's also about understanding how to read interpersonal communication, body language,
Right.
learning to be around people that come from completely different backgrounds as yourself, and learning to communicate with them, getting out of your comfort zone, out of your bubble, being around people that are not related to you through blood or culture or religion. You're around everyone. It's an entire microcosm of society there that's teaching you. All right. And what's cool about that entire environment is that it's unlike the real world, meaning that you're in this cocoon where you are learning all this stuff and there's support helping you, as opposed to growing out in the real world and you're just thrown onto the fire and, feast of famine and to each his own, Lord of the Flies. But it's very different when you're put into a situation where people want you to succeed and they are encouraging this sort of interaction, this overall all-encompassing universe of education. And I think that in and of itself is something that is not spoken of enough when you talk about a university atmosphere. And what I do hope is that I hope that at some point in the near future that we're able to allow students back on campus so they can fully realize what it means to have higher education in a university setting.
Okay, very good. Lord of the Flies. I know that that book very well. So let's move into your international basketball experience. But before we do, help us understand what you were thinking before you graduated. Where did you think you were going? What did you think you were going to be doing? And how did those ideals connect with what actually happened next?
This is the and I hope that some of the basketball players at Emporia State are watching this. This is the blessing and curse of being a college athlete, because from the moment I was in the elementary school through high school and on, I've always played ball. I was always an athlete. I always knew where I was going to be between 3 p.m. and 5 p.m. during the season. It's going to be in basketball practice. I always knew we had a game. There's just structure that is automatic to your life. And after years, at some point, that structure is going to go away because you're not going to have it anymore. So, and then there's also the sprinkling in of reality of the very minor percentage of people that actually go to the NBA. Okay. I fortunately had an opportunity to go and play in Australia, and I had a blast. I had a blast. And I still have friends that are my friends to this day. Thank God for FaceTime and WhatsApp and email because we still speak regularly, despite the time differences, with many of my international friends, which I'm very proud of. And I'm sure a couple of them will be watching this if they aren't watching already. So that was an opportunity wherein I went to a league and in Australia, but it wasn't, you don't make NBA type money, but you're happy to prolong your professional career. You're happy to prolong that structure that you've been accustomed to for all your life and what you have really pegged somewhat of your identity behind. So the thing about me is that sometimes, especially in my younger years, I could become so singularly focused on one thing. And my focus then was to do well and do right, make sure I'm taking care of things. But I wanted to play basketball. And so I knew I was going to play basketball. Even though in the back of your mind, you can't play this forever. Okay, forever is forever. I can play now. So I'm going to play basketball. So that is what led to that. And I am very grateful for that experience. That also is something I'm grateful to Emporia for, because had I not gone to Emporia and went through that gauntlet of homesickness initially, I would not have been prepared for Australia. Because remember, we're still very, very early email days where most people didn't have email. You still pay for long distance phone charges. Now I'm living in Australia. Okay. Right. I'm not, an hour away from East Coast time in the Midwest, from Kansas to Michigan. Now I'm talking about maybe a whole 11, 12-hour difference between where I was with my family, and also just being in a completely different culture for the most part. Thank God the English was Australian, but at the same time, I think that my time in Emporia helped me to mature to a level that I could handle that, and help me emotionally as well in dealing with the separation that takes place when you're flying away from the nest for the first time.
Good, good. So I hear you encouraging the students um, to allow themselves to experience different things, get exposure, um, move out of the comfort zone in a safe way, but in a manner that will cause them to stretch, uh, so that they can be more flexible and stronger, both, as they experience their um, their professional journey and their life after college. I think I hear you saying that.
Absolutely.
So very good. So now let's transition into how the experience. How did you come across your experience with the Kansas Department of Commerce, and then let's talk a little bit about how your career path um, occurred, and then where you are now as Director of Economic Policy for Los Angeles.
Sure. So I spent some brief amount of time in France as well before coming back to Kansas. Went back to Michigan for a brief period of time, and then from there I went back to Kansas, enrolling in graduate school. And so when I was there on campus, and I ended up transferring to Baker, but originally when I was there on campus, Dr. Rich introduced me to former Lieutenant Governor, well, he was Lieutenant Governor at the time, Gary Shear. Dr. Rich is amazing. He's amazing. I guarantee he's touched so many lives around this globe that spawns from that one man. And that's something, and it's a legacy, and I'm part of Dr. Rich's legacy, and I'm very proud to say that. And I will hold myself to account so that I can earn that title as being part of Dr. Rich's legacy. Now, that being said, Gary Shear invited me to Topeka This is the lieutenant governor. Okay. And I am grateful and humble, and I try to do things in a certain way because, like I said, I don't blend well. And I always know someone's watching. I conduct myself a certain way, and it's genuine and it's honest. And I think that Dr. Rich saw something in me, wherein of all the students that he interacts with, he said to himself, you need to meet the lieutenant governor. There's something there that I think you may be interested in. And I met the lieutenant governor, and the position that I was interviewing for was well beyond my requirements. The only thing that I had been doing for the most part, I enrolled back in school to try to get my master's degree. And then I was primarily just on my resume, it's just playing basketball, shooting jump shots. Dr. Rich and Gary Shearer saw something in me. I remember a paper that I still have, and I feel old when I look at it because the paper is yellowed and things. It's a paper that I wrote for Dr. DeVito's class about doing business in the country of Hungary. Okay. And I submitted that paper along with some of the application or whatever documentation they wanted when I was applying for that position with the Kansas Department of Commerce. And it was that paper that I wrote that they said, okay, this kid may have it. And I went in management, and I was the youngest on my team and at the Kansas Department of Commerce. And they gave me a territory where I managed the West Coast business recruitment efforts. So any company located in the West Coast or the decision-making party was based in the West Coast. And for us in Kansas, the West Coast means everything west of Colorado, everything west of Kansas. So my territory geographically was the largest territory. It's like 11, 12 state territory. So from Colorado clear out to the Pacific, up to the Canadian border, down to the Mexican border, that was my territory. Any company located within that geographic territory looking to expand, relocate, or consolidate facilities anywhere in the Midwest, I tried to sell them on bringing that investment to Kansas, which thus creates jobs in the state of Kansas. It was a learning curve to a certain extent. The learning curve was in me understanding the technical aspects of the different incentive packages and how the programs work. But one thing that I just took like a fish to water was my ability to get to the decision maker. It was something, I don't know, maybe it's that same thing about my inability to blend, wherein I was able to, if I want to get to a certain person, I can get to that person would speak to me. And we would, yay or nay, whether or not they would like to hear more about the opportunity of coming to Kansas. So that's where that started. And I assume you want me to progress through the career from there. So from there, if is that okay for me to go?
Yes, go ahead. Go right ahead.
So from there, I did a couple of projects with CBRE as I was still living in. First, let me back up a bit. Before that happened, there was an opportunity for me to drop my title as a formal Kansas employee and become an independent contractor with FRIERSON Associates, my own firm. And Kansas signed on as my very first client. So I was still performing the same duties I was for the state of Kansas. My only requirements and regulations, or restrictions, I should say, was that I couldn't do that exact same sort of economic development work for any other state or municipality, because that would be a conflict of interest. But I can have other interests as well, but just not that same sort of business. And so I moved out to Los Angeles. Kansas was still my client, and so I would travel back and forth to Kansas and travel around my geographic territory as necessary, and that opened up a lot more doors for me. Now, one of the projects, I worked two projects actually, and with CBRE, which is the world's largest real estate and investment company, and so I worked a data center project with them and a customer service center project with them, and these are multi-million-dollar projects that we're working, and we have constant interaction with this executive team for both the client and for the consultant, in this case with CBRE, and I'm representing the state of Kansas on that side. So at some point through one of the second projects that we're working on, guys like, Ron, you need to be on this side of the table. You need to come over here with us. They basically recruited me. to come and work for them. They say the money's a lot better over here. You come over here. And so that's how I went from that to CBRE. And in the meantime, I also started with my former teammate, Kevin Robinson. We had Ad Hoc Staffing Solutions, which was a technical recruiting firm. So my buddy Kevin, who's I was the best man in his wedding, was a former teammate of mine in Emporia. Kevin was responsible for recruiting the talent, which is something he had been doing for years with Northrop Grumman, and now Kevin's doing a fantastic job with Facebook. So he was in charge of getting the talent. I was in charge of getting the contracts with the major companies. Now, Kevin, it's very tedious to get talent, especially during that time. It's probably a lot easier now, being the where we are as an economy, but back then it was very tedious. And also because of all of my other responsibilities, it was really difficult. It would have been difficult for me to go door to door asking for companies whether or not, asking whether or not they needed technical help and they needed to hire someone, because our employment service could provide them. So me being me, I said, I went to the biggest fish I could find. I said, I'm going to NBC Universal. Now, most people don't think like that, but that's how I think. So I finagled my way through contacts and relationships, and I went to NBC Universal. Long story short, they signed on and we became a certified vendor for NBC Universal. And so now we had this one gigantic client, which is all we needed for our little company. And Kevin was responsible. Once my job was done, my job was done. So Kevin from there had all of the tedious work of trying to find people to fill the requirements for NBC Universal. So that being said, then with CBRE, and then from CBRE to Hickey & Associates, and then I actually had a dip in my career that I spoke about during my Hayes lecture, a dip that I didn't see coming. For most of my professional career, it seems like every time I took a step forward, everything happened on time. And it didn't happen. So I had like a year or two, I'm in limbo. I was in commercial real estate, but that's still not, it wasn't at the level of what I was accustomed to throughout my professional career. And this is one of those times wherein, like I spoke about earlier, wherein your roots, your constitution comes out of what you're really made of. And through my spirituality and with my family, and through a constant spirit of service that helped me overcome. And as a matter of fact, I was in Kansas giving a Hayes lecture when I got an email from the mayor's office, and they wanted me to come in and speak with them. And I said, well, I'm in the Midwest right now. I'll be back on X day. They said, well, okay, when you come and speak with us. When I spoke with them, I think it was a Thursday when I went and spoke with them, and they asked me a bunch of questions about my economic philosophy on this. They knew about my past. They knew about my skill sets. They knew a lot of what I've done, which has been pretty, me looking objectively, I was like, yeah, that's pretty good. So anyway, that Monday, they offered me the position to become the mayor's director of economic policy. And with that position, what I do is that I am basically the mayor's link to the private sector for large industries. We have a director of community business that deals with mom and pop stores around the town, which are very important. Small business is very important. But me, I handle large catalytic real estate developments, ones that are not 100% housing. If they're 100% housing, they go into a different bucket. But things like the Staples Center, things like big mixed-use hotels, skyscrapers, I kind of run all of that as a liaison with the mayor. If those developers need something, they come to me and things of that sort. Sports and entertainment. So I'm the liaison that deals with the Lakers and the Clippers. Go Lakers, not the Clippers anymore, and go Dodgers, by the way.
Go Dodgers.
Sports and entertainment, all of the major studio heads, we kind of deal with them. I don't do this all by myself. I have a team that reports to me. So I have a team, a manager that deals with sports, a manager that deals with this, a manager that deals, and they all kind of, so I'm like the Swiss Army knife. And I also run and tech. So tech, sports, entertainment, large catalytic real estate developments, bioscience, manufacturing, so the Northrop Grumman's of the world and some of the defense contractors. And I oversee 3 different city departments. So each department has this hierarchy, and you have the head of a department, the executive director or something of the department. Well, those executive directors have a boss. For these 3 departments, I'm their boss. So the Department of Cannabis Regulation, the Economic Workforce and Development Department, and the Convention and Tourism Department. So I kind of look over all of those. So it's a huge responsibility. I don't do it by myself, and I report up to the deputy mayor, who then reports directly up to the mayor. So that's pretty much the trajectory of my career, and I've only scratched the surface. I'm both anxious and excited about the next step because I know it's going to be fantastic. I know it's going to be exciting, and I know it's going to be bigger than I imagined. But I'm up for it. So yeah.
Of course you are. Of course you are. So you hit on a few key character items. You talked a little bit about fortitude. You talked about integrity. You didn't use that word. You use the word spirituality, and I think we both will say faith. And faith being tested is what you're talking about. You talked about innovation, working, stretching yourself to excel, towards excellence, always. And you talked about relationships, the value of relationships, those that come from the past and those that you're building on to carry yourself into the future. So those are all important. I want to shift gears. We have probably about 10 minutes or so. If we go a little bit longer, that's fine. But I want to get to two things. One is the social, cultural, and economic issues that you have to deal with as the director of economic policy in one of the largest world economies right now. And then I want to tee us up for some Q&A. So talk to us, the listeners, about those social, cultural, and economic issues that you have to think about and bring balance to as you do your daily work and advance those relationships that you described.
Los Angeles is a polycentric megapolis. When I say polycentric, I mean that in most places, so New York City, there's Manhattan. In Chicago, there's the Magnificent Mile area. And so there are points in a particular city that everything evolves around. Los Angeles is polycentric because we have downtown, of course, we have Hollywood, we have South LA, we have the Miracle Mile area, we have West LA, we have Beverly Hills, we have Santa Monica, we have so many different pockets. We have the beach communities, we have the valley. And each of these 88 cities that make up Los Angeles, the greater Los Angeles area, have their own culture, their own identity. But at the same time, from the seat that we're in my position, and my boss's position, we have to look over all of them, not just the residents in West LA that are doing very well in Brentwood, but also the ones in Pacoima that aren't doing as well economically for whatever reasons. So one of the things that we've have always done is to try to keep an equity lens in just about everything we do. Now, that has been heightened because of COVID, okay? And so because of COVID, it exposed and brought to the fore and many of the inequities, both economically and culturally, socioeconomically and culturally within our city. And you can see it in a city like this, unlike any other. the homelessness situation we have out here. And the thing that's a crime to me is the fact that we have many homeless people that actually have a job. Now, if you are in a certain part of the city, you would say that, you know, you have these homeless people, they're all mentally ill, or they're all this, or they're all that. They just need to get a job, whatever, or they need help in a hospital. When you dig into the data, which is what we have to do, you'll find out that less than 30% of them actually are mentally ill. Many of them just been priced out. So we take all of these things into consideration. If you look at because of COVID, in May, I believe we had the height of our unemployment numbers. I think it was upwards of 21%. Now, for you historians out there, you'll know that 24, 25% was the Great Depression. So 21%, that's remarkable. And if you look at some of the major industries, like I said, I deal with major industries. So the third largest employment industry in LA County was travel and hospitality. So the hotels and restaurants. I think they had over 500, 600,000 people working in that industry. Now there's maybe 200, 300,000. They've experienced an incredible dip. These are all people. So when you're dealing with something like this, I have somewhat pivoted my work, so to speak, because I deal with, by nature of me, I deal with primarily the people that already have money. Some of the, I deal with tech, I deal with but even with large catalytic real estate developments, some large landlords, because of the rent moratorium, they are having issues with paying their mortgages, or the terms of their loans with their banks are being have to be renegotiated, or they're being asked to produce more collateral because they're not able to meet their bank notes because they don't have rents coming in themselves. This thing is touching everyone. Now, part of what we've been tasked to do, and rightfully so, is to try to find ways to stabilize and assist the most vulnerable. Okay. And so what some of the things that we've done, especially with small business, and that's why I said my job is somewhat pivoted, because I'm helping out a lot with small business. We put together a microloan fund. With the help of the county, we've established a regional grant so that companies or individuals can come and apply for these grants. And we're using some of the federal COVID relief funds to do this. There's strings attached with that, so we need to have these mechanisms in place to have that money out the door by a given time, or else it has to go back to Treasury. So we're doing the best we can to make sure the throughput is accelerated and we can put it out on the street in a responsible manner, because with any federal funds, we are going to be subject to an A-133 audit at the end of the day. So we have to be sure we disperse the funds correctly, and we have, and we'll continue to do so. So stabilizing, and then assisting recovery, and then eventually getting back to growth. I spoke about the travel and hospitality industry before. The travel and hospitality industry is not expected to get back to 2019 levels until 2024, 25. That's a long time to get back to where you were in 2019. And that means you're absent the growth that you experienced for 11 years prior to that point. So with that being said, we have a lot of ground to make up. One of the great things about us being in Los Angeles is the fact that our city typically bounces back from somewhat catastrophic economic catastrophes better than many other cities, primarily because we're not completely dependent on one industry. The size of our economy and the diversity of our economy can help us kind of come back a little quicker, but quicker compared to what? So right. Quicker, it doesn't mean quick. It just means quicker than Cleveland or Detroit. It just means quicker. So all that being said, what we're trying to do is trying to keep everything together and assist the growth and assist our citizens the best we can. And for me, that means assisting business. When the pandemic first started to go crazy, for lack of a better term, I remember coming here on a Sunday 11 o'clock or so on a Sunday, and I didn't leave until close to midnight that night, trying to make sure that I had all of the grocery stores in the area, making sure they had everything they needed so that we wouldn't have to have a mad rush at the stores and riots, because obviously people get into survival mode and the first thing they do is go to grocery stores, which they weren't ready for that type of demand. So we had to do a lot of different creative things to make sure that grocery stores were going to make sure that they could have the products to stock the shelves so that people could feel food security, dealing with the different food pantries around the city to make sure they were adequately stocked up so they can help the most at need people within our community. So our entire and City Hall is a little bit of because of COVID, it's a little bit of a ghost town right now. But our entire mission is primarily stabilization and recovery, and it's all hands on deck. And we're doing whatever we can to make sure that takes place so that we can see our way out of this. And as we do that, we're definitely not going to say try. As we do that, we're going to make sure that we are doing it in an equitable way. And perhaps this provides us an opportunity to fix some wrongs, some historic wrongs in the process of as we rebuild, that we rebuild the right way so that everyone can share in this recovery.
That's good, good. You know, I really do appreciate you touching on not just the policy aspects, but the human experience that policy impacts and the current issues that our society right now is experiencing as it relates to COVID, the disparities that are in the different systems, our economic system, our health care system, etc. I do also appreciate you laying out some of your philosophy as well as some of the initiatives that are underway to help the community that you serve, and what the overall team is really doing and looking forward to as you move into the future. One pointed question that came from one of our listeners is the tension that comes between the self-interest, to advance your career against the common good. And I heard you describe the tension that might exist between the city's desire to grow and to improve its economy, while at the same time dealing with real social issues and trying to address those social issues. And so in parallel to that, on a more personal level, how do you reconcile that tension, or do you experience that tension at all? Can you just spend 60 seconds on talking to that? And I want to invite our listeners to submit any questions, and if there are no others that come in, we're going to transition in just a moment.
That for me personally, that is not something I deal with. There is no tension. For me, the common good is a personal aspiration. That's one thing feeds the other. Remember when I said earlier, when I went through my career dip, it was a spirit of service that helped things come back to me. Most of my relationships, professional and personal, there's it's reciprocal. You get what you give, and back and vice versa. That's before you can accrue interest, or before you can reap a stock dividend, you first have to buy the stock. So you have to give before something comes back to you. And that principle applies to everything. So for me, there is no tension or no clash between my own personal interest in getting forward and the common good, because I think they're both hand in hand. Now that may sound a little sacrimonious or self-righteous, but it's not, because I do believe, again, that whether it's good or bad, it comes back. And so the best thing to do is to try to do the best you can and do good and be unselfish. Now, there's a time for everything. The circumstances are different, but as long as your head and heart is in the right place, then usually good things that tend to happen. Now, as a city, quickly, I know you said 60 seconds. I'm going to take 30 seconds more. As a city, you cannot run a city of this size only taking on the concerns of a small minority of the constituents. There's no way it could stand. It just wouldn't. You have to address the basic civil needs of civic infrastructure, education, food, shelter. You have to, in order for those that are doing well to continue to do well, or else they're going to all build walls, and that won't work either. You have to do this in order for any society, any civilization, any institution to further itself. It needs to look at the base bottom line of what is necessary for us to progress together. This is a capitalist society. Some people are always going to do better than others. And I believe in that. I believe that you should reap the rewards of your effort if you put something in. And I don't believe everyone should get the same in regards to some things. In regards to other things, yes, you all should get the same. You all should get clean water. You all should have a right to a decent public education, because the vast majority of people in this country of kids are going to get educated at public institutions. And if we don't educate them properly, then we're going to have a lot of ill-equipped workers out in the workplace one day, and business is going to suffer because they don't have the base requisite skills in order to achieve certain tasks that business needs. So it all works together.
Absolutely. So equity doesn't mean equal; it just means fair. And with that, Mr. Ron FRIERSON gets the final word. So thank you all again for joining us. Don't forget to log on for the Zoom after party by clicking on the link provided in the email sent earlier. And I would like to once again thank you, Ron, for those insightful and depth-filled stories and recommendations for our students to think about and all of our listeners. On that note, I think that's we're going to ask everyone who has the link to go to the after party. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.